Hi everybody. In this video I'm going to show you how to expand on the liquid layout that we started in the last video. So if you haven't finished your first liquid layout, you should finish that one first because this one is just going to expand on that. So what I'm going to do is actually go to my folder. So from home, I'm going to go to my folder that says My REPLs, and in here I'll find my liquid layout. I have a bunch of them because I've done a bunch of like test runs of this and all kinds of stuff, but I think this is the one that we used, the liquid layout example. Find yours, find your liquid layout, and click the three-dot menu all the way over on the right. And you'll see an option that says fork. So what that means is to sort of create a new branch, like create kind of like a fork in the road. Create a new branch of this this file where you can edit that new branch, basically just a new copy, without ruining your old one. So do that, click that, and what it'll do is it'll just create a new file for you. And the file name will be the same thing with a number at the end. I'm just going to change that. I'm going to call mine liquid layout expansion. And then just going to wait for REPL to load. Failed to connect. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. There we go. So let me just run it, see how it looks. If this is the original liquid layout that we did. What I'm going to do is I'll be expanding it to add more rows of 3 columns. So just, a row goes left to right, like a group of 3 like this. And then the columns are top to bottom. So the columns with the same numbers should line up from top to bottom. All of column 1s should be on the left, all of the column 2s should be in the middle, and all of the column 3s should be on the right. So I'll add more content that way. And then I'll also add, I'll show you how to do like just a layout with different numbers of columns. So let's go ahead and just do that. So first, one of the easier things to do is just, once you have a layout like this, add more content. And all you really have to do is just add more of those divs, more of your content divs. So for example, I mean, this is just for demonstration, so this isn't, I'm not actually adding any real content, so I can just copy all this. Obviously, if this was a real site, you'd probably have like, real like text in there, or pictures, or links to click on, or whatever, and you'd probably want to change them. There'd be kind of a point just having the same thing over and over again, but this is just a demo, so I'm going to copy my entire content div, making sure that I get the opening div tag and the closing div tag. I'll paste it down here. And because I'm just going to remove this feature I just wanted that to be sort of at the top of the page. You could have multiple feature element, like sort of bit large full screen features, as you scroll down, maybe there's a whole new section of the page, but I don't, that's not really what I'm going for. I just want to add more content. So let me see, if I run this, it actually turns out fine. There is actually a problem with this though. It might render fine for you. It might look all nice and neat and lined up, but it might not actually, because there is an error here. Sometimes browsers are smart enough to just avoid the error for you. Sometimes they're not. So the problem here is that I actually have an ID content that I used in 2 different places. IDs are supposed to be unique. So this doesn't always cause a visible error, but it is incorrect. It is incorrectly programmed. You should not be doing this in your code. If you want to use the same identifier across multiple elements, you should use a class instead. That's what classes are for. Like we have article and column names that are in classes. If this isn't going to be unique anymore, kind of like how feature is unique. I only have one of those. If it's not going to be unique anymore, I should really turn it into a class. Even though it didn't break my page, it's just it isn't right. It's just that the browser is smart enough to display it correctly anyway. So I'm going to change that ID content to class content. And then let me look at the CSS. Where did I use content? I only used it here for the overflow auto, which isn't like that big of a deal. It kind of depends when you're shrinking and growing the page. Sometimes it matters how it handles things that would go outside of their container. But I'm just going to put a dot there because it's a class now. So now it's dot content for the content class, and over here it is class content. If I run it, the appearance doesn't change one bit, but the code is correct. So that's all you have to do is just, if you want to make more, if you want to add more content, just add more content. And just use the class names to identify how you want things to display. That's what's so nice about class names, is if something, for example, is a content div, it will contain, like in our current layout, it will contain 3 columns. And if you have 3 content divs, then you have 3 rows of 3. You'll notice that each column 1 is lined up to the left because all of our columns 1, 2, and 3 are floated to the left. So they just, in the order that they're listed in the HTML file, they just push as far as they can to the left. So column 1 renders first because it is listed first. It goes the farthest to the left within its container. Remember, this is relative to the inside of the container. What's the container for these columns? It is the content div. The content div is actually what contains the column 1, column 2, column 3 content. So that's the container that I'm talking about. So that float property, float left, just means push as far left as you can within your container. So column 1 pushes as far as left as it can. Column 2 pushes as far left as it can, but it stops because column 1 is taking up space, so it ends up in the middle, and column 3 is the last one. And then that's everything for that container. The next group is a whole new container. It's a whole new container div. So that's adding rows. Really simple once you actually have the layout all set up. So now what about if you wanted to change the layout? Maybe you decide instead of a 3-column layout, this grid looks pretty nice, but for some reason, maybe I wanted it to be a 4-column grid. Okay, well, first let me add some content so I can see how this, so I can actually see it when I make the changes. I'll just add one more piece of content, one more content section to each one of my rows. So I'll make sure I change the column when I paste it to column 4, and I'll just make sure I change the actual content inside it just so I can see the difference. And I'll just do that for each row. So each row now contains 4 columns. What's that going to do to our site? break it completely. It's now a giant mess. It's still trying to hold to the 3-column setup that we established using the class, using the class styles for column 1, 2, and 3. But we didn't style anything for column 4, so it's just trying to kind of go somewhere, anywhere, wherever. Just it's trying to do the default behavior for just a paragraph element, probably. But it doesn't really look good because we didn't do any, we don't have any CSS styles to handle a 4th column. So let's add one. So right here where we have all the styles that set up what a column is supposed to do, it's going to add column, the class column 4. So that'll be included. And then another problem you're going to run into, if I run this, still is going to kind of look incorrect. The reason for that is it's spilling over and it's creating a whole new row because we set it up with widths that were intended for 3 columns. This is approximately a third of the page with a little bit of room for the margins, So just got to do the same thing. So the way the math kind of worked out last time was out of 100%, we wanted to account for, two margins for each, 2 margins for each box, and there are 3 boxes in each row. So we tried to account for that. Well, let's do the same thing here. Now it's 4 columns, each with 2 margins on the on the left and right, and that means we want be after margins 92% of the screen to be taken up by content, which is 100% minus the 8% that'll be taken up by all the margins. Okay, so I have 92% of the width, just divided by 4. I'm just gonna do some quick math, and 92 divided by 4 is 23. So what I could do is set this width to 23%. And you'll see now all the 4 columns actually fit and they actually line up correctly. And if you expand your page, you have a nice, well-organized, neat grid of rows and columns.